Kale was alone on the jungle moon called Varix 4. He was a repairman, not a soldier, not a fighter. His ship had broken down after a supply mission, and he had landed in the wild forest to fix it. He thought it would be easy to fix the parts, take off again, and go home. But then he heard the growl. It came from a cave behind thick trees, low, deep, like a warning from some beast. Kale froze. Holding his toolkit tight in his hands, he looked around. Nothing moved. Nothing came out. But that growlet sounded close. He didn't want trouble, but his radio was still dead. He needed shelter for the night, and that cave looked dry and safe. So, slowly, step by step, he moved forward. The growl came again louder, this time, like claws scraping the stone, but still, he saw no creature. Hello? He called out softly, I don't want to fight. I just need a place to stay for the night. That's when she stepped out of the shadows. Small, no taller than his chest, her body thin and covered in messy brown fur. Her ears were long, like a fox's, and her eyes were glowing red in the dark. She had claws on her hands and sharp little fangs in her mouth. But she was not just an animal. She wore a small necklace and held a broken spear in her hand. Leave, she growled, voice low but clear. Her language was broken, like she had learned it from listening to old recordings. Kale lifted his hands. Slowly, showing he meant no harm. I'll go, all right. No need to fight, he said calmly. He turned to leave, heart pounding, but then he paused. Just for a moment, he looked back. The little beast girl was staring at him, and then, just for a second, her face changed. Her cheeks, under all that fur, turned pink. It was like she was embarrassed. Kale blinked, confused. Did she just blush? She noticed him looking and quickly bared her fangs again, growling louder this time. He didn't argue. He walked away, back into the forest. But his mind was racing. Who was she? That night, he didn't sleep much. He stayed in his camp, near the shipwreck. Thinking about those red eyes and that pink blush, she was wild. Yes, but not like an animal. She understood him, even spoke, and more than that, she reacted like a person. The next day, he explored nearby, hoping to find clean water. He found a small stream not far from the cave. He didn't go close, didn't want to scare her again. But he left behind a food bar and a clean bottle of water on a flat rock near the stream. Then he stepped back and waited behind the trees. Minutes passed, then he heard soft steps. She came out from the bush, scrawling. Careful, sniffing the air. Her claws were ready, but her eyes were curious. She looked at the food bar, sniffed it, then bit it. She chewed slowly, then grabbed the water, and drank fast. When she was done, she looked around, then stared straight at Kale's hiding spot. He thought she would growl again, but instead, her ears twitched and her cheeks turned pink again. Then she vanished back into the woods. That was the second time she blushed. Kale didn't understand why, but something inside him said she wasn't just wild, she was lonely. That night, he left another food bar, this time with a small metal pendant, a gift. He had carved a simple sun on it, something friendly. He didn't wait to see if she would take it. He just hoped she would. By morning, it was gone, and in its place, she had left something behind, a rough little stone, shaped like a heart. Not perfect, not smooth, but clearly made on purpose. Kale held the stone in his hand and smiled softly. This wasn't just a meeting, it was the start of something strange, maybe even dangerous. But deep in the jungle of Varix 4, among broken ships and old ruins, a tiny alien beast girl was starting to trust him, and though she growled, though she warned him to leave every time he got a little closer, she blushed. Kale spent the next few days repairing his crashed ship. But his mind was not fully on the tools or the engine. He kept looking over his shoulder, scanning the treetops. He had a strange feeling like eyes were always watching him, and they were hidden behind thick branches and leaves. Zin the Beast Girl watched quietly. She crouched like a hunter, her body still. Her glowing red eyes fixed on him. She didn't growl now, not loudly. She didn't speak either, but every time Kale turned around, she disappeared like smoke. It became a game. He would pretend not to notice her. She would pretend not to care. But every time their eyes met, her ears twitched and her cheeks turned soft pink again. He never got used to that blush. It was so strange. So out of place on someone who looked wild and dangerous. But it made her seem real, not just some animal, but a girl hiding behind a beast's mask. One evening, just before sunset, Kale made a small fire and cooked some simple food. He placed an extra bowl near the edge of the camp, then sat far from it. He didn't look at the trees, didn't call out, he just waited, and then he heard it, a soft thump. Like feet landing on the dirt, he turned his head slowly, pretending to fix something with his tools, but from the corner of his eye, he saw Zin. She crept forward on all fours, her nose twitching, her claws clicking softly on the ground. She sniffed the bowl, looked around, then took it and backed away fast into the trees again. She didn't say thank you, but he saw the blush again, deeper this time, almost glowing under the fading light. The next morning, he woke up to find a small gift left for him. It was a feather, blue and silver, clearly rare, tied with a strip of leather, not much, but it was something personal. Something wild but thoughtful. Kale smiled and tied it to his belt. He spoke out loud. Not sure if she was listening. Thanks for the feathers, Zin. He used her name, the one she had. Said on the first night, somewhere in the trees, a branch rustled, but there was no growl, no answer, only silence, and a feeling that she was listening. Later that day, a sudden storm rolled in from the mountains. Dark clouds covered the sky, and heavy rain poured down fast. Kale rushed to cover his tools and equipment. Lightning flashed, thunder cracked the air, and the wind howled through the trees. He ran to his shelter and closed the flap tight. But then he saw something in the storm, a small shape moving in the distance. Zin, she was trying to get back to her cave. Soaked, shivering, her fur flat against her skin, she slipped once, then again, her limbs weak from hunger or cold. Without thinking, Kale grabbed a heat blanket and rushed out into the storm. He shouted over the rain, "Zin, come here, you'll freeze out there." She didn't answer, but she didn't run either. She fell to her knees, claws digging into the mud. Too tired to move, Kale reached her, wrapped the blanket around her small body, and lifted her gently. She growled weakly, but there was no real anger in it. Her eyes were half closed, her body trembling. Back at his camp, he placed her near the heater, gave her warm water, and dried her fur with soft cloth. She sat silently, breathing hard, but she didn't attack. Instead, she pulled the blanket tighter around herself and looked away, blushing again, this time with a slow sigh, like she was embarrassed to be helped. Kale sat a few feet away, giving her space. He spoke gently. "You don't have to be afraid of me. You know." Zin's ears twitched, but she didn't reply. She simply closed her eyes and leaned against the wall, her blush still glowing on her cheeks. That night, she didn't leave. She stayed curled up near the fire, silent but present. And when Kale woke up at dawn, he saw her still there watching him with soft eyes, not glowing red, but calm, maybe curious. She stood slowly, dropped a small, hand-shaped stone by his side, and whispered, "Not beast." Then she ran off into the trees. Kale picked up the stone and stared at it. It had 5 tiny fingers, just like a human hand, carved into the rock. His heart beat faster. She wasn't just watching him, she was trying to understand him, and maybe be understood too. Kale was fixing a broken solar panel near the forest's edge when he heard a sharp yelp. It wasn't loud, but it made his heart jump. It was quick, pained and familiar. He dropped the tool and ran, following the sound. His boots splashed through wet leaves and soft mud. Then he saw Herzen, crouched near a tree. One hand gripping her leg tightly. Her other hand was bloodied, and she was breathing fast at first. She growled when he came near, her teeth showing and her ears flat. But then she winced in pain and looked away. She didn't run this time. Didn't vanish into the trees. Kale knelt a few feet from her and spoke gently. "Let me help, Zin." Shook her head quickly, her claws digging into the dirt. "Beast." "Strong," she muttered, almost to herself. But when Kale stepped closer, her body trembled not in fear, but in pain. He slowly reached out, showing her his open hands. "No weapons," he said, "just help." She looked at him with tired eyes, then finally nodded once barely. It was enough. He moved to her side and carefully took her small foot in his hand. There was a long cut along her paw, deep and raw, probably from a sharp rock or branch. Blood had dried around it, mixed with dirt. "This will sting," he warned softly. Zin didn't answer. But as he poured clean water over the wound, her claws clenched the ground and she growled low in her throat. Her body shook, but she didn't stop him, And when he touched her ankle to wrap the bandage, her cheeks turned bright pink again. Even while in pain, she blushed. Kale blinked at the sight. It was so strange, so fragile. This fierce little creature was embarrassed by his touch. Like a shy girl instead of a wild beast. Once the bandage was tied, Zin pulled her foot back and stared at it in silence. Then she glanced at Kale, her ears twitching nervously. "Why?" she asked simply. He smiled softly, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Because you're not just a beast," he replied. "You're someone worth helping." She looked away, her tail curling around her leg. Then, without a word, she slowly pushed something toward him, a small carved bone shaped like a flower. "Gift," she said, not meeting his eyes. He picked it up carefully, holding it like treasure. "Thank you," he said, meaning it. Zin gave a small nod, her eyes flicking back to his face for just a moment before turning away again. She tried to stand, but her leg gave out, and she fell with a soft cry. Without asking, Kale picked her up gently, cradling her light frame in his arms. Her eyes went wide. Her ears perked up, and her whole face turned red with blush. She growled again, but it was weak and almost confused. Not carry me," she said in a flustered voice. "I have to," he replied. "You're hurt." She didn't argue again, only covered her face with one hand and let him take her to his camp. He set her down near the warm heater and gave her water and dried fruit. She picked at the food slowly, stealing glances at him while he worked on his tools. That night, Zin didn't speak much. She sat near the fire, watching it with her knees pulled close, her injured leg wrapped in cloth. Kale noticed something. She was trying to sit like a human, not crouched on all fours like before. It was awkward, uncomfortable, but she tried. She looked up and caught him watching. Her blush returned, and she quickly turned away again, covering her face with both hands. Kale laughed gently and said, "You don't have to change for me." But Zin shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I want to learn." His heart softened even more. This wasn't just a creature surviving in the wild. This was someone trying to remember who she used to be, maybe discover who she wanted to become. Before sleeping, Kale handed her a soft blanket. She stared at it like it was treasure, held it close, and whispered a word he didn't expect. "Safe." He turned off the light, leaving only the glow of the heater, and as he lay down nearby, he heard her soft voice again, "Kale." "Thank you." It was the first time she had said his name. Morning came softly on Varix 4, with pale yellow light passing through the thick jungle trees. Kale was still asleep in his camp, the gentle sound of birds chirping above, but something smelled odd, like something burning, a strange mix of smoke, spice, and metal. He opened his eyes slowly, sat up, hand froze. There, near the fire pit, was Zin, crouched low, tail swishing nervously. She held a small pan with one shaking hand, her other hand gripping a stick she used to stir the bubbling mess inside. Black smoke puffed into the air, and the food inside looked burnt, very burnt, Zin. Kale said, still waking up. She jumped, ears perking up in surprise, then growled lightly. But it was a weak growl, more embarrassed than angry. She held up the pan awkwardly, her cheeks already starting to glow pink. "Make food," she said, with pride and hesitation mixed in her voice. Human-like, hot stuff. Kale rubbed his face and smiled slowly. "Did you try to cook this?" he asked gently. She nodded fast, tail twitching. "Watch you many times," she said. "I learn." Kale stood and walked over, taking the pan carefully from her hands. The bottom was scorched black, and the smell was strong but not the worst thing he'd ever seen. Still, he knew if he bit into it, it might taste like charcoal and regret. But he looked at her, Zin, the wild girl who once hid in the trees, who once told him to leave. Now she stood here nervously, watching his face, waiting for approval, her claws tapped together quietly, her whole posture stiff. But her blushing face said everything. She wanted to be seen, to be appreciated. So he took a bite, just a small one, and smiled through the bitter taste. "It's crunchy," he said, trying to sound cheerful. Zin's eyes lit up, and her ears perked with excitement. "Crunchy is good?" she asked hopefully. He laughed softly. "Crunchy is, it's very good." She clapped her hands once and sat down beside the fire, tail wagging slightly. It was the first time Kale saw her act like a girl her age, maybe 13 or 14 in human years, excited, proud, and full of nervous energy. She looked at him and said, "Next time, no burn." Then paused, looked down, and added quietly, "Maybe teach me." Kale nodded, surprised and touched. "Of course," he said. "We'll cook something simple next time." She smiled. And it wasn't a smirk or a sneer, it was small, soft, real. But she quickly hid it behind her hands, her blush deepening even more. Later that day, while Zin rested under the shade of a large leaf, Kale cleaned the tools and checked the power cells. Suddenly, he heard Zin humming low and off-key, but familiar. He turned to see her holding a small metal object he'd left by the fire-broken music chip from his ship's databank. She pressed it to her ear and repeated the tune softly, her head bobbing to the beat. When she noticed Kale watching, she stopped and blushed again. "You like music?" he asked. "Not no." "What it is," she said slowly, "but sound make heart warm." Kale smiled. "That's music." She nodded, then handed the chip back like it was made of gold. "You keep," she said. "You smile when it play." That night Kale cooked for both of them, letting Zin help stir the pot. He showed her how to tell when it was done, how to blow on the spoon before tasting. Every time their fingers touched, Zin jerked slightly and looked away, ears burning pink, but she didn't growl, didn't run when they sat to eat. She didn't gobble it down like before. She sat upright awkwardly, but Trianand used a spoon instead of claws. It was messy, but she tried. She wanted to learn. Kale watched her in the firelight, her eyes calm, her movements slower now. And he realized something: this wasn't just survival anymore. Zin was changing, growing, adapting. She was choosing to become more than just a beast, not for survival, but for connection. As the stars came out and the jungle quieted down, Zin sat beside him without speaking. Then, in a low voice, she whispered, "Long time. No." Kind voice. She looked at him, her blush soft and glowing. "You, ... Not same as others." Kale's heart ached at her words. He didn't ask what others meant, not yet. He only said, "You're safe now, Zin, with me." She leaned, her head on his shoulder, slowly, unsure if it was allowed. He didn't move. just sat there beside her as the fire burned low. For the first time, Zin didn't hide her blush. The peaceful days didn't last long. Kale was finishing a signal booster. Near the edge of the jungle, when the quiet air cracked open, a sharp whistle echoed through the sky, followed by a thunderous boom. Something large was entering Varix 4's atmosphere. He looked up and saw it a dark gunship, shaped like a claw, tearing through the clouds. It hovered for a moment above the trees, scanning, then began to descend. Kale's stomach dropped. This wasn't a rescue ship. This was a hunter's craft. Zin appeared from the forest behind him, her nose twitching, her tail stiff. She sniffed the air and froze. Her claws gripped the dirt. Her ears went flat, and her face turned pale beneath the fur. "No," she whispered. "They found me." Kale turned quickly. Who are they?" Zin's voice shook. "Catchers ... They come for me." Before he could ask more, the ship landed with a hiss, and the jungle shook under its weight. 3 figures stepped out to all, armored eyes hidden behind black visors. They walked like soldiers, but their gear was marked with the symbol of a leash wrapped around a planet. Kale had seen that symbol before in old war records. It belonged to the Threx Syndicate, known for taking alien children and training them as pets. Fighters, or worse. And now they were here, on Varix 4. One of them raised a device and spoke in a harsh voice. Tracking signal confirmed. He said, "The creature is near." Zin backed away slowly. Trembling, she whispered, "They put tag in me. When I was little." She pointed to her neck, just below the fur. Kale stepped forward without thinking, checking the spot, and sure enough, under her skin was a small bumpa tracker. "Monsters," he muttered. "You're not a thing. You're not theirs." Zin looked up at him with wide eyes, but her voice was flat. "If they take me, no more Zin, only beast again." Kale clenched his fists. He had 2 choices: stay quiet and let them take her, or lie and protect her. He knew what he had to do. He turned and walked toward the soldiers. Raising his hands, "I saw movement." "Out east," he said, pointing in the opposite direction, "some kind of small creature." The lead hunter narrowed his eyes. "You sure?" Kale nodded, keeping his voice calm, fast, animal-like. Had fur ran through the trees. The soldier scanned his device again and cursed. "The signal's weak, but possible." They moved quickly, heading east, guns raised. Scanning as they walked, as soon as they were out of sight, Kale rushed back to Zin. "We have to move," he said. Now, Zin didn't argue. She limped after him through the undergrowth, her legs still weak, but her fear gave her strength. They ran until they reached a small cave, hidden behind vines and rock inside. Kale set her down and began digging through his pack. "We need to remove the tracker," he said. Zin growled. "Will hurt." Kale met her eyes, only for a moment. "Then you'll be free." She nodded slowly, pulling her hair back, exposing the bump under her skin. He sterilized his knife, took a deep breath, and made a small cut. Zin winced, biting her lip to hold back the cry. Blood trickled down, but then the metal chip slid free, glowing softly in his palm. He crushed it under his boot. "It's done," he said. Wiping the blade clean, Zin's breath was shaky, but her eyes were filled with something near relief. She sat back, resting, and whispered, "You lie for me. You protect me." Her voice was soft, full of wonder. "No one ever lie for Beast Girl before?" "You're not a beast," Kale said, gently wiping the blood from her neck. "You're Zin." She stared at him for a long moment, then looked away, her face glowing red again. "I not know why I blush," she whispered, tail curling tight around her leg. "But when you near, it happen." Kale smiled softly. "Maybe because you're not used to kindness." She nodded slowly, then added, "Or maybe, ... I just like you." Then she covered her face quickly, letting out a low, flustered growl outside. The gunship roared overhead, still hunting, but inside the cave, the small alien girl who once growled at him to leave now sat quietly beside him, injured, scared, but not alone. And not afraid to blush anymore. The jungle was quiet again. The hunters had moved on, chasing a false trail, but inside the cave, Kale and Zin stayed hidden. The fire was small, just enough to keep them warm, and the silence between them was filled with thoughts neither had spoken yet. Zin sat across from Kale, her knees pulled to her chest. Her injured leg was healing, her body cleaner than before, her fur brushed back with care. But tonight she looked different. She had wrapped herself in a cloth Kale gave her, tied like a robe, and her red eyes. They were softer, Kale noticed, but didn't say anything at first. He just watched her, wondering what was going on inside her head. Then Zin spoke, her voice quiet and calm. "Before you." "I forget how to speak." Kale leaned forward, listening. Zin touched the side of her head gently. "They trained me when I was little," she said, "not to talk. Only to fight, to bite, to win." She picked up a sharp stone and drew lines in the dirt. "Other kids, too, like me, all called beasts by the catchers." Her hand paused, fingers shaking. "Some didn't survive," she whispered. Run, hide, lose voice, lose name." Kale felt a lump in his throat. She wasn't just acting wild because of her species, they made her that way. Stripped her identity, caged her spirit. "But now," Zin said, looking at him, "I want name." "Again, you already have one," Kale said gently. "Zin," she nodded slowly, "but I want more than name." She stood up, her balance still shaky, and walked toward the cave's small pool of water. She stared at her reflection, then slowly reached up and began to remove the necklace of claws she always wore. "I keep this from training days," she said. "Proof I was strong." She looked at it for a long time, then dropped it into the water. It sank out of sight. She turned to Kale, eyes glowing not with rage, but something new. "I don't want to be Beast Girl," she said clearly. "I want to be me." Kale stood slowly, meeting her gaze. "And who is that?" he asked softly. Zin smiled a small, real smile. "Someone who learns, who blushes, who ... Who likes when human smiles at her." Kale chuckled. "That's a good start." She walked closer and sat beside him, her tail resting calmly on the ground. "I want to speak better," she said. "Use real words, like you." "Then I'll teach you," he said without hesitation. She blinked, surprised. "You will?" "Of course," he replied. "You taught me a lot already." "Like what?" She tilted her head curiously. He smiled. "How to listen, how to survive in the jungle, and how to understand a growl doesn't always mean danger." Zin laughed. Quietly, for the first time, a soft chuffing sound from her throat. Then, suddenly shy, she looked away, her cheeks glowing again. "I still growl sometimes," she said. "Can't stop it." Kale leaned back, looking up at the cave ceiling. "I don't mind," he said. "Some people yell. Some people whisper, you growl." She giggled, then surprised herself with the sound. She covered her mouth, blushing deeply. "I sound funny," she said. "You sound free," he replied. Hours passed like that, quiet talk, sharing stories, learning words. Zin practiced speaking slowly, repeating simple phrases. "My name is Zin. I like warm fire. Kale is nice." Each time she got it right. She grinned proudly, then blushed when he praised her. Later that night, as they sat near the fire again, Zin pulled something from a pouch she had. Hidden in the cave, it was a thin silver circlet, bent and worn, but still shining faintly. "My mother gave me," she said, "before they took her." She placed it gently on her head, crooked and too large, but fitting somehow. "Do I look like Beast?" she asked, tilting her head. Kale shook his head slowly. "No, he said. You look like a princess. Zin's eyes widened, and she covered her blushing face again, but her tail flicked happily behind her. I not know what princess is, she mumbled, but if you say it, maybe. I like it. Kale reached into his bag and pulled out an old data pad. I'll show you tomorrow, he said. Pictures, stories. We'll learn together. Zin smiled, curling beside the fire, her head resting on a blanket. She whispered, no beast, no cage. Just Zin. And for the first time since he met her, she fell asleep without growling once. The jungle was still under a gray sky. Storm clouds rolled far in the distance. But for now, everything was calm. Kale stood just outside the cave, scanning the horizon with a tired look. He had finished repairing the ship the night before. It was ready to fly, but leaving didn't feel easy anymore. Inside the cave, Zin sat near the fire, her silver circlet still crooked on her head. She was carefully tracing letters on the dirt floor, copying from Kale's datapad. Her claws weren't made for writing, but she tried with quiet focus. She looked peaceful. No longer the growling wild girl from the trees. She was cleaner now, calmer. Her fur brushed smooth, her speech clearer. But one thing hadn't changed. She still blushed whenever he looked at her for too long. Kale walked in and sat beside her. Zin, he said softly, the ship's ready. She stopped writing. Her body stiffened. And her eyes lowered. Oh, she whispered. You go now. I'm not going yet, he said. But I have to make a decision. She nodded slowly. Pretending not to care, but her hands trembled, he continued. There's a spaceport 2 days from here. I can call for help, take you somewhere safe. He paused. A real home. Not a cave. Zin stayed quiet, staring into the fire. I don't want cage, she said finally. Or training, or collars. Kale nodded. I won't let anyone do that to you. Then, gently, he asked, but what do you want? She looked at him, her red eyes wide and nervous. I don't know, she whispered. I feel warm here. She touched her chest over her heart. When you near. I feel strange, but not bad. She struggled with words, then added, when you talk to me. I don't feel like beast. I feel like ... She paused, then said in a small voice, like girl. Kale gave a soft smile. That's because you are. She looked up slowly, her face already starting to turn red. He gently reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. You've come so far, he said. You can choose your path now. Zin looked away again, then stood up fast, like she couldn't sit still anymore. She paced near the entrance, her tail twitching nervously. I don't want to be left behind, she said, voice shaking. But I don't want to slow you down. Kale stood as well, watching her closely. You never slowed me down, he said. You gave me a reason to stay longer. She turned toward him quickly, and the blush bloomed brighter than ever before. You mean that? She asked. He nodded. I stayed for you, he said. Not the ship, not the jungle you. She took a step forward, her eyes not glowing with anger, but with emotion. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If you leave, can I come with you? She bit her lip, unsure, like she was scared of the answer. Kale stepped closer, just a breath away. I was hoping you'd ask, he said with a soft grin. She froze, staring at him with wide eyes. Then, slowly, shyly she reached out and took his hand, her claws curled gently around his fingers, careful not to hurt him. No one ever held my hand before, she said quietly. It feels warm. It means you trust me, he replied. She nodded slowly, still blushing. Then she whispered something he didn't expect. Do you like me? ... Even when I growl. Kale laughed softly. I like you especially when you growls in. She smiled at that, hiding her face for a moment in her arm. Her blush now almost glowing. Okay, she said shyly. Then I want to stay with you. They packed a little. They had a blanket, the datapad, the circlet, and the carved heartstone. Zin looked back at the cave one last time. Then followed Kale into the clearing where the small ship waited. The door opened with a soft hiss, the ramp lowering gently. Zin paused at the bottom. Tail flicking once. Then, with courage in her steps, she climbed in and sat beside Kale in the front seat. As the engines roared to life, she looked out the window, eyes full of wonder and nervous hope. The stars were waiting. Kale turned to her, strapped in and ready. You sure about this? He asked one last time. Zin didn't answer. With words, she simply looked at him, face burning red, and nodded. Her blush was her answer.